The National Desk, America's News Now.
Tragic. It's extremely unfortunate. I would encourage everyone to do the best they can to stay inside and off the roads today.
At least one dead in the Northeast as the region remains under flood and wind warnings.
It is in the interest of both Israelis and Palestinians to move forward toward two states, living side by side in mutual security.
Secretary Austin in Israel today as the U.S. looks to ease tensions in the ongoing war. Then Southwest Airlines learning their fate from a disastrous 2022 holiday season as 2023 looks to be the busiest travel season yet. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, a major storm still impacting several states in the Northeast, bringing heavy rain, damaging winds, flooding, and travel delays. At least one person has died. More rain and potential flooding are forecast now for parts of New England, and also this happening tonight into tomorrow. Power outages, they remain a huge problem, namely on the Northeast, affecting as many as 800,000 people, according to poweroutage.us. The worst of it are in Maine and Massachusetts, with more than 400,000 and 242,000 respectively without power. Wind advisories in Maine will remain in place until at least 1 a.m. on Tuesday morning. The weather is also impacting airports across the country. More than 500 flights in the United States canceled and another 3,600 delayed. In Boston Logan, 40% of all flights were delayed today and more than 100 were canceled. The storm is starting to wind down for most of the region as it moves north into Canada. Meantime, renewed calls for a truce as pressure intensifies on Israel, both internally and externally, to return to hostage negotiations. This as the death toll of innocent civilians climbs and the fallout over the mistaken shootings of Israeli hostages continues. Tonight, a closer look at the attempts those hostages made to avoid their fate. We're now learning the captives, all young men in their 20s, had used leftover food to write the words SOS in Hebrew on makeshift white flags as they sought to be rescued. The incident sparking major backlash from many Israelis who say the country should be doing more to prioritize the hostage rescues. Though not confirmed, hints of negotiations underway right now. Today, CIA Chief Bill Burns meeting with the head of Israel's spy agency along with the Qatari Prime Minister in Poland to reportedly discuss a potential new deal.
Israelis and Palestinians both deserve a horizon of hope.
Meantime, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin speaking in Tel Aviv today after a series of meetings with Israeli officials where he urged Israel to protect civilians in Gaza and make the war there more surgical. The U.S. has been standing with Israel since the October 7th attack by Hamas, but now pressure is growing to help rein in Israel's ground campaign. As the tensions continue to rise, Red Sea shipping attacks continue by Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. Today, 2 commercial ships attacked with naval drones. The group has threatened to target any ship they believe is headed to Israel until Israel allows more aid into Gaza. Secretary Austin today speaking about the plan to organize a collective response.
These attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law. And so we're taking action to build an international coalition to address this threat. This is an international problem, and it deserves an international response.
There have been over a dozen incidents in the Red Sea since the beginning of Israel's military campaign in Gaza to root out Hamas. And just this past weekend, USS Carney, the American guided missile destroyer, shot down 14 drones that had been launched from Houthi-controlled territory in Yemen. And the threats manifesting economically, BP just became the latest company to pause Red Sea shipments over fears of Houthi attacks. The company will halt shipments of oil, liquid natural gas, and other energy supplies, which could spark supply chain disruptions, thereby bringing up the cost of shipping. Meantime, here at home, Temple B'nai Israel in Oklahoma City evacuated after receiving a bomb threat via email. Services and school were closed before the building was cleared. This comes as the FBI investigates at least 300 threats against Jewish houses of worship made in roughly 30 states this weekend. So far, no bombs have been located and there have been no reports of injuries or casualties. 46-year-old James Cooper has been charged with a DUI and inattentive driving after crashing into a Secret Service SUV around the president's motorcade last night. The sedan hit the SUV as Biden was leaving his Wilmington, Delaware campaign headquarters. No one was hurt, and police said today the crash was an accident. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed into law new legislation to permit Texas police officers to arrest migrants who have come into the United States illegally. Critics liken the action to a 2010 law out of Arizona that was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. No legal action has been taken yet against the new law. Meanwhile, 2 freight rail bridges to Mexico are now closed. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency says the international railway crossings in Eagle Pass and El Paso, Texas, were closed due to a surge in organizations using freight trains to smuggle in migrants. The CBP says the move will also allow its personnel to help Border Patrol take migrants into custody. A manhunt for a convicted sex offender in Texas is now over. Authorities captured 39-year-old Robert Yancey Jr. this morning after he escaped from a prison near Houston over the weekend. Yancey is serving a life sentence without parole for child sexual abuse. 2 others were also charged with helping him escape, including his own mother. Yancey is facing felony escape charges. One day after his 87th birthday, Pope Francis finalizing a controversial change in church policy. The Pope announced today Catholic priests may bless same-sex couples. Francis says that people seeking God's love should not be subject to, quote, an exhaustive moral analysis to receive it. The blessing does not extend to marriage, which the church maintains is a sacrament between a man and a woman. As recently as 2021, the Vatican said same-sex unions could not be blessed, calling them a sin. The removal of a Confederate memorial from the Arlington National Cemetery has been halted. A temporary restraining is now in place after a federal judge stopped the work that had begun this morning. It comes after last year's recommendation from an independent Cummins as part of a push to remove Confederate symbols from U.S. military facilities. But a lawsuit filed on Friday argued that the removal could, quote, desecrate, damage, and likely destroy the memorial, as well as surrounding grave sites. A hearing has been scheduled for Wednesday. In 2024, the United States military will have the smallest force since World War II, according to the Pentagon. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us from Washington with more on what's driving that decline.
The Defense Department missing their 2023 recruiting goal by a combined 41,000 individuals.
Overcoming our recruiting challenges requires a national response with contributions from across government and the private sector.
Pentagon officials telling Congress last week it's tough recruiting in a strong economy because people have more job options. Also, only 77% of young people qualify to serve without a waiver.
The causes of the recruiting challenges we face are complex and multifaceted.
Military officials also admitting the struggle to connect with Gen Z.
Members of Generation Z have low trust in institutions and are decreasingly following traditional life and career paths.
Some pointing to polling showing patriotism among young Americans is near record lows. Just 18% tell Gallup they're extremely proud to be an American. The military also discharged 8,000 troops for refusing to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Only 43 of those tried to rejoin after the mandate was repealed. Full Measure's Cheryl Atkinson spoke with the Pentagon's press secretary about the issue.
As a member of the military for 30 years, all of us have had to take and continue to to take multiple vaccines. So when we applied the vaccine mandate, that was a lawful order. And while that has been rescinded, we continue to encourage our members to become vaccinated because, again, I need to be able to count on you to go where I need you, when I need you to get there.
While all branches are failing to attract enough members, the Army is taking the biggest hit, therefore shrinking by 8.4% over the last 3 years. The Army now launching a sweeping overhaul of its recruitment process to address enlistment shortfalls. Army leadership says the transformation could take years to fully implement. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Kayla, thank you. Coming up, why Southwest Airlines has been hit with its biggest fine ever as a busy holiday travel season ramps up. Then what a change in U.S. home builder confidence means for next year's housing market. Plus, how safe are America's judges in the face of rising threats and violence? Our team investigates after the break. Southwest Airlines has been hit with a record $140 million fine stemming from its disastrous performance in the 2022 holiday travel season. Thousands of flights were disrupted, affecting more than 2 million travelers over a 10-day period. The Department of Transportation says the airline didn't help customers enough or refund passengers fast enough. The fine is on top of the roughly $600 million the airline has already issued in refunds and reimbursements. Southwest has also agreed to create a $90 million fund to compensate future travelers impacted by cancellations or major delays. Meanwhile, AAA predicts the upcoming holiday travel season will be the busiest ever. It is projected that 7.5 million people will fly between December 23rd and January 1st, topping 2019's record of 7.3 million flyers. Holiday traffic on the roads also expected to increase. AAA expecting about 104 million people to drive to their holiday destination, which is almost a 2% increase over last year. AAA expects 104 million people to hit the road, a 1.8% increase, by the way, from last year. The minimum wage is going up in 22 states starting on January 1st. More states are mandating that employees get at least $15 an hour. And in 13 states, the pay is increasing because it is linked to inflation. 3 more states and Washington, D.C. will increase their minimum wage later in 2024. For the first time in 5 months, there was a boost in home builder confidence this month. That's according to experts at the National Association of Home Builders, who say a recent decline in mortgage rates is a key factor. National correspondent Atrel Nashar reports on the housing market outlook for 2024.
Prospective homebuyers who felt priced out of the market may soon be able to come off the sidelines. Experts at the National Association of Home Builders feel confident mortgage rates have peaked for the time being.
A lot of reason to be optimistic that we're going to see those rates continue to fall into the mid 6s, maybe even as low as 6% by the end of 2024.
Last week, the Federal Reserve announced it would not raise interest rates this month.
Activity in the housing sector has flattened out and remains well below the levels of a year ago.
But mortgage rates are just one part of the equation. Home prices have been enough to box out buyers, especially first-time buyers. Redfin called 2023 the least affordable year for home buying on record. Someone earning the median U.S. income of about $78,000, buying a median-priced home of about $408,000, would have had to spend roughly 41% of their earnings on monthly housing costs. Experts say this is all about inventory. Owners of existing homes who locked in a low rate during the pandemic, for the most part, don't want to move. And builders have been stymied by high construction costs. In 2024, it's all expected to start to turn around. The National Association of Home Builders expects a 5% increase in new construction of single-family homes.
We need to build our way out of the supply crisis. We are looking into the second half of next year before those homes come online.
Most economists have scrapped predictions of a U.S. recession. Morgan Stanley agrees it's unlikely. But if one were to occur, its economists say that could send home prices down by as much as 8%. Plenty of volatility remains, but buyers seem positioned for a more promising, though still expensive, 2024. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
A new Monmouth University poll out today shows President Joe Biden is at his lowest approval levels of his presidency, his entire presidency, and that's according to the series of Monmouth polls taken every 3 months. With 34% approving and 61% disapproving, the 17 points difference is also his largest discrepancy between favorable and unfavorable reviews. And the biggest issues now weighing the president down are infrastructure, jobs, climate change, inflation, and immigration policies, where only a quarter of the country approves and nearly 70% disapproves of the handling of the border. New research suggests severe obesity is becoming more common in young American children. A study in pediatrics looked at 2 to 4-year-olds enrolled in WIC. It found 2.1% of kids in the program were severely obese in 2010. That dropped somewhat by 2016, but 4 years later, it went back up, hitting 2%, and there is no clear reason for that rise. Actor Jonathan Majors, he has been convicted of assaulting his former girlfriend after a 2-week trial. The former couple had gotten into a physical dispute in a car last March. The fight spilled out into the streets. Majors' then-girlfriend, Grace Jabari, suffered a series of head and arm injuries, including a broken finger. His attorneys argued she was the aggressor. Majors faces up to a year in prison when he's sentenced in February. Immediately following the verdict, Majors was dropped from all upcoming Marvel TV projects and more. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We are taking the pulse of America.
That is video from Marie Columna's Ring camera at her house. She says Sergio Gardia broke into her home when she and her 2 children were out of town.
He was my former pastor, and it all started when my divorce was finalized, and he was coming to my house to help me, and that was always, you know, he just wanted to help me.
Columna says Gardia was her pastor at TRBC in Espanol Church, and she says this pattern of stalking has been going on for around 6 years.
I had no evidence of that, so I never reported it, but this was the first time that I knew about it and had video footage of it.
Lynchburg police arrested Gardia on November 11th after that break-in.
One person is dead after an explosion caused by a propane gas leak led to a fire at a Pennsylvania hotel yesterday. Emergency crews were still investigating at the Burdenhand Family Inn today. Glass and debris scattered along the street there. Pennsylvania State Police have not yet shared the victim's identity.
A stall couldn't keep one student safe. As you can see in this video, recorded at a restroom on the Sunnyside High School campus in Fresno Thursday.
I can't even get the screams of him crying out. I can't get it out of my head. It's traumatizing. My son is traumatized.
Selena Colleen says her son, who she's asked we not name, is a sophomore at the school, enrolled in special education. He has autism. A Fresno Unified tells Fox 26 News disciplinary action has been taken against the student shown carrying out the attack. Colleen says her son told her he wants to stay at the campus. Now she wants Fresno Unified to consider changes for special ed students.
I believe they should possibly have their own restrooms.
And she's pleading with parents to talk with their kids.
You should teach your children about special needs kids and how vulnerable they are.
Coming up, judges in America are facing increasing threats and attacks. We look into what protections are in place for these civil servants when we come back. Threats and violence against judges are on the rise, and there is perhaps no more shocking example than a Maryland judge gunned down in his driveway this fall by the man he ruled against in a child custody case. While there are some protections in place for federal judges, Spotlight on America national investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher discovered there are virtually no protections in place for judges at the state and municipal level.
It's become an all-too-common occurrence.
Tonight, the suspect accused of planning to kill Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Judges and their families targeted, attacked, and killed.
A Maryland judge was killed in the driveway of his own home on Thursday.
A deadly shooting at the home of a federal judge in New Jersey.
These threats are real.
All too real for federal judge Esther Salas, who in July of 2020 was at home with her husband and son Daniel when the doorbell rang.
The next thing I heard were like these mini bombs.
Salas ran upstairs to an horrific sight.
And that was my son lying perpendicular to the front door, holding his chest. And my husband, who was shot, it was at that time that, we said goodbye to our son.
Who put himself in between the shooter and his parents.
This was an assassination attempt that was meant for me.
And sadly, one of the thousands of acts of violence aimed at judges across America. In 2019, the U.S. Marshals reported 373 threats against America's 2,700 federal judges. By 2022, that number more than tripled to 1,362. And it is only at the federal level that these threats are tracked. For the more than 30,000 state and local judges, it's anyone's guess. In fact, only New Jersey and Oklahoma shield state judges' home addresses online. Last year in Maryland, the state Senate passed a version of a shielding law, but it didn't get out of committee in the House. Retired Maryland U.S. District Judge Paul Grimm is the director of the Bulch Judicial Institute at Duke Law School. He says in order for the system to function, members of the judiciary must be protected from threats and acts of violence.
Our system depends on the rule of law.
And right now, he says, we're dangerously close to undermining the very principles that bind our system.
If the public no longer has respect and faith in the system and the impartiality of the judges, then it's a very short step to say those kind of people need to be removed from office, and I'm going to take steps in order to do it.
We see with Judge Wilkinson and his death that these threats are real. We must be proactive in what we do as a nation to protect judges and to protect our democracy.
Salas and her husband got 2 laws passed, one at the federal level to increase protections for federal judges and provide financial incentives for states to increase security measures for state and local judges. The other, Daniel's Law, in their home state of New Jersey, among other things, prohibits the disclosure of judges' addresses on government agency websites. Salas says she hopes other states follow suit.
If we don't do something, how in an instant a family's life can be imploded. And we know this not only from my case now, but sadly with Judge Wilkinson's case.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
And coming up, no one has won the top Powerball prize after dozens of drawings. How high that jackpot has now climbed. In a year of high jackpots, the Powerball lottery is once again over $500 million. There has not been a jackpot winner since October 11th, when a ticket worth $1.7 billion was bought in California. We all remember that. And since then, 27 drawings have been held without a top prize winner. The jackpot for tonight's drawing now stands at $543 million before taxes. And some lucky winner may get that Christmas miracle. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again for America's top coverage this evening. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.